Hey there, this is Jen T. Grace. I'm the founder and CEO of Publish Your Purpose, and I am here with Monica today celebrating the launch of your new book. How are you feeling?
Very excited. so happy I can pick up my book and hold it.
Yes. It's like
It's a long time coming. A long time coming.
It has been a long time coming, and I was saying this to you before we hit record, that it's wonderful to celebrate the success when you were in our writing program, because it's like we have such more of a long-term relationship by the time your book actually comes out. So I'm thrilled that we're actually sitting here and finally having this conversation. It's very exciting.
Yay.
Yay. All right, so I know what the book is about. You know what the book is about, but those who are watching us have no idea. So can we start there?
Okay. Well, obviously Doubtful to Decisive kind of tells you right there what it's about, but 8 steps to get unstuck and take action. We get doubtful about just about anything. Should I do this or that? How do I lose weight? How can I be a better leader? And a lot of times people just sort of put it off and they don't really decide to do anything about it. So I'm a life coach, and I wanted to put a lot of the tools and the techniques and the ideas and all the exercises and stuff into a book. So about a third of it kind of handles that. How do you shift from being doubtful to being decisive? I'm going to do something about it. Get out of your, it won't work mind, the overwhelm and the stress and all that. And then there's about a third of it is understanding yourself. Like, I have certain ways of doing things. We all have how we're wired and our default habits and what's the path we always take. And the only way to really see new results is to take a new path, right? Which I had my graphic designer create a little drawing for me, blue, thank you. And if you understand the parts of you, like I have a really strong restless part, a very strong avoider part, a little bit of that people pleasing. So when I know the parts of me that are kind of in this decision of how to get from doubtful to decisive, I have a better chance of getting there. And then of course I had the 8-step tool, but I mean, that could have been just the book in and of itself. But I realize, everybody kind of knows what they want to do or should do, and they might have a lot of options, but it's the actually doing it that the first part of the book really addresses. Like, how do I shift my thinking and get into a different mindset?
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like, you were saying before that there's a lot of different, trying to get out of this doubtful in a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different ways. Are you, in terms of maybe stories that you share or examples that are shared, or just people that you coach personally, are there certain patterns or themes that you've noticed in working with people?
Well, even just this morning, I was coaching a long-term client of mine, and she'll just say, "Hey, do you have 15 minutes?" And, when you're in overwhelm and you're like, I have 15 things to do, I've got these 2 big projects on. So first you have to recognize, okay, let's let the overwhelm just, change a channel for a moment, take a deep breath. What's here now? And what do you want to accomplish? And how do you separate, I can't do 2 things at once. What's the priority right now? What are the steps that can get you there? In my book, I talk about being on the fence for years with my husband. He really wanted to move. And I was I'll have to do it all myself. He works in Manhattan. He's never home. I got the dog and the kids and my part-time job, and, woe is me, it'll all be on me. So my mind was focused on all the problems, which I think is the biggest shift to make. Get out of that focus. Well, if it was possible, if what could happen if you were look at, so what did I need to know in that story? I needed to know what my house was worth, what else was out there, and just remind myself that I wouldn't be doing it alone. Of course, my husband would be helping me, and it actually could work out better than I imagined, So now we're in this beautiful antique home with, an acre and a half instead of neighbors right on top of us, and it all worked out. And once
Yeah.
I got decisive, that was a really, I think that was why my first story that I tell, because as soon as I had a plan, I was so decisive. We put the house on the market a month later. We sold the house a month later, and we moved a month later. So it all happened really fast once I got off the fence about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it makes sense because you're shifting your energy into
Yeah,
the direction of making decisions rather than that being feeling stuck. Yeah. I
right.
think it makes a
I'm
lot of sense.
avoiding, and yeah, it's not important.
Hmm.
I'll deal with this other stuff.
Yeah. Procrastination, our good friend.
Mhm. Yep. And we tend to put off things that are important to just us. Like, I know most people will say that they'll take care of this thing for their boss or their family or their parent or someone else, but when it comes to their own personal goals, they don't deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
So
there's always like someday, right? Like someday, and then someday never
yeah,
comes.
right,
Mhm.
right.
Yeah. So if we take a step back, like what's your hope, right, for your reader? Like what is the big intention here for someone to pick this up because they're feeling doubtful, help them make decisions, and then like what is the bigger picture here?
Right. Well, the hope is that they find some tools, some little jewels in there that will help them, um, get out of that stuck place and start taking action, and seeing new results. I kind of break it up into three things. I've kind of decided you need to make the shift, start taking action, and then you see the results. And until you make that shift, um, not much is going to change.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping that people will actually read it. I mean, how many books do we own that we haven't read? So I challenge you to actually read it. And even if it just means open up the book and find an exercise, and I have 48 different exercises in here, Jen. They have their own table of contents because I like a book where I can find things.
Yeah.
Oh, set priorities. Oh, that's a good one for me to work on today. Let me do that one. Um, and I hope that the last third of the book, which is just the 8 steps, I think you can use that anytime. Like, once you get the general knowledge behind it and start using some of the tools, then you can go through those 8 steps rather quickly,
Mm-hmm.
at any time. So, and I hope to create a community of people who are trying to do this together. Like, I've already been invited to my friend's book club. They're going to read my book, and I'm going to come and talk to them about it. And um, so I even have an invitation on my website. Invite Monica to your book club.
Yes. I
Yeah,
think your book will be a great book club read because I feel like there's that extra added lens of accountability when you are kind of in a group setting talking about a book, right?
yeah,
And I love that your exercises have their own table of contents because it does make it, because I think there's a lot of times there's books or there's people who just like open any book on their bookshelf and they'll read to whatever the sentence is or that passage, and it's like that's the message I needed to hear today. But
yeah,
whereas for you, flipping through to try to find an exercise, I can just flip to that table of contents and just be like, all right, this looks good to me today. And at least it gets them to take one little baby action, like just a tiny step
yeah,
in the direction.
yeah, yeah. What
Mhm,
is my one thing that I could do today? Yep.
mhm. And I would say to encourage people to actually reach out to you, right? Like I think that that's one of those things when we think about authorship is that we as readers read a book and then we're like, oh, I can't email the author. I can't possibly reach out to them. And it's like we're all
Right.
human, we're all accessible,
Please
and we
do.
love to
Yes.
see the emails. Like we love to see the transformation and the excitement that someone might be having reading our work. So if someone does decide to take us up on this offer of just flipping to the back, finding an exercise, like email it to you, right? And just engage in a conversation. I think it'd be fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have a free consultation on my website. One of my big, grown up big girl pandy things is, I got Calendly. So
Yes.
people can set appointments with me. And um, yeah, I really do hope people will reach out. And I do want to create a community. It's not quite there yet, but I want to create like a membership where people come, and I offer free webinars, and I will be offering classes that I would charge for. But for now, like I'm doing one on goal setting, February 23rd, and I'll probably offer that, every month or two. I want to do something about the shift. I want to just have discussions. Right now I have a networking group called Authentic Connections for women entrepreneurs. We meet once a month, and we've become this community of authentically connected women, and we just have a discussion topic every month. And that's what I want it to feel like. I want it to feel like we can all participate, we all learn from each other, and some of that accountability too. Like, yeah, that's what I really want to work on that thing next, and then the next time you see them, like, hey, how's it going? So yeah, I do hope to create a community with it.
Yeah, which I think would be fantastic, because I feel like it's one of those things that it sounds like a good idea in theory to kind of
Mhm.
embark on something by yourself, being like, I got this covered. I got the right mindset. And then you get into it and you're like, okay, I actually thought I did, but I may not be 100% there. I need help. And so
Right.
now you, even with your, you mentioned your webinar on the 23rd, which I think is a great starting point, right? Like, go to your website, register for the webinar, get on
Yeah.
that. And then when your membership community comes out later, it'll be like a perfect way to kind of keep that engagement, like really help people move along, rather than having to do individual coaching work, which I feel like not everyone is ready for or wants to do, or any number of variables.
Right. Right. And I already have a group mastermind for people, entrepreneurs. But I'd like to do more group coaching, because I think people do appreciate being that, we sometimes we have that herd need.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of 10 kids, right? So doing anything by myself is completely foreign, and I'm a people person. And I know that I do better if I partner with someone, and that's why working with you and your team, and then my buddy Midge, who became my partner after we did our 6-month writing class. We just kept meeting a couple times a month. I know I do better when I partner with people.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
think other people, you just need a sounding board. You need someone to sort of,
Right.
especially extroverts, we process out loud.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just someone to bounce the idea off, just to get like validation of like, does this make sense or not? I just need one other human to think that
Yeah.
this is a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you and Midge had that accountability, like both had the wherewithal to realize, hey, I need some additional guidance. I'm going to need some additional hand holding. And then you were able to do it together. And then her book came out in October, which was
Mhm.
Gay with God, Midge Noble. And now you're here in February. So like, you're still so close in the grand scheme of things in terms of getting your books done. But because it requires a community and accountability for so many tasks in life.
Yeah. Yeah. I really don't think I could have done this on my own. I got involved with something that ended up creating an ebook back in, I think it was 2017. And it was 5 steps back then. Now it's moved to 8, but it was based on managing stress, tension, overwhelm, and procrastination. A little bit of a theme for me. And I called it the stop syndrome. And I always said, it was an ebook. Well, someday maybe I'll make it a printed book, but I want to fix it up. I'd want to, make it bigger, or make it more, or whatever. And it was always like this idea that I had. But then once I met you, and I don't know, it's just something, I went off the doubtful to decisive. And once I decided I was going to do this book, it's
Yeah.
been like this. I mean, it's hard, because life happens, and COVID and travel and family and clients and whatever. But I knew at some point it was going to get published.
Yeah, yeah. And like, what was the thinking about the kind of the publishing side of this? And I love, because you're a coach, like I feel like you have like just a different kind of perspective to this, maybe a different answer. But like, you mentioned the word overwhelm before, and I know
Mm,
that you have said that, I don't know if you said emotional overwhelm, but there was like
mm,
overwhelm was some part of like the publishing process. Like, so
yeah.
like, what was the, I don't know, maybe the most overwhelming, the least overwhelming kind of part of the process for you?
It always came in waves, because you don't know what you don't know. And then as you get through one thing, you're like, oh, okay. And then another level hits you. I think I think the time element was probably the most overwhelming for me, because I always felt like I was trying to work faster than my body was used to working. My I have this certain flow of working part-time and having space, and and here I was like trying to speed it up. Um So yeah, it was overwhelming in different ways and different times. And even just like if it could go wrong, it did go wrong kind of thing. Like the timing, the day the books came, like I pre-ordered my books, like, oh, I can't wait till my books come in and I can have a few events with local people and then start to get some reviews. And then it would go live on Amazon, and like it all happened at once. And the books came on a day when it was snowing and sleeting, and my books were sitting on my front stoop with ice on them. I was like, ah, like nothing seemed like it was going to go the right way. And then I just had to just breathe. You can handle the next thing, and you can do it at the pace that you want, and little by little,
Yeah.
Right now, I'm just dealing with things that are coming to me. I'm not really pushing. I've been asked to speak in a couple of different places, the chamber and at a library. And, I'm just dealing with those things a little bit at a time. Talk myself off the overwhelm cliff and into, it'll all be okay.
I think it really is just like handling one thing at a time, where it's like there's 50 things that need my attention, but I can only focus on one and then two and then three up into 50 rather than all 50 at the same time. Right. Especially when it comes to books or publishing, because there's just so many moving pieces and parts to this whole process.
Yeah. Yeah. I have checklists for this and suggestions for that. And, a friend wanted to talk to me about marketing. I'm like, I'll when I'm ready, let me get through the things that I know I want to do and need to do first. And it's not going anywhere. So
it's the beautiful thing about a book. It is with you for the rest of your life and beyond, which is a wonderful thing. Versus a website and then it's outdated.
Right. Yeah, I don't think anything could get outdated in what's here, right? And I would love for everyone to be able to own it and be able to use it. And I always equated coaching with working with an author of a self-help book, which is really ironic because now I'm the author of a self-help book and I'm a coach. But like if you could design the perfect self-help book that would get you out of whatever this issue is, and then you had the author to like talk you through it. And I'm like, well, that's where I am now. That's what I want. The book. I've had a few people say, I can hear your voice in this book. Like you're there,
Yeah. That is such a good testament to your writing process, and then the collaboration through the editing process to make sure that they actually feel like they're hearing you. Because when it's not written in the right tone, people will be like, oh, that doesn't sound like her.
Yeah. Yeah. And, again, Blue was my developmental editor, and it was nice to work with someone who kind of got me and read the whole thing and said, I could see this being here instead of there, or, we were trying to trim it down from 90,000 words to something a little bit more and it still ended up being a freaking, it's like an inch thick. But yeah,
that was
every page is a little bit of me,
Yeah. And how cool is that? Because you're, like what your vision was before of like, having you are now the vision that someone else might have in terms of your book.
Yeah.
That's such a cool full circle experience.
Yeah. And I've thought about coaching authors too. Not in what to say, but how to keep the dream alive, and how to, keep working at it, and how to stay decisive and stay in action. And, so, sometimes it's, I'll be working with an entrepreneur who wants to be writing a blog regularly or something like that. But, there's something different about a book.
I agree. It's a different process. Even though some of the skills transfer, it's still just like a different mindset at the end of the day, because it's a big undertaking. And then in your case, you produce a prolific volume of words that we were like, all right, we need to rein it in and pare it down a bit. So
pare it down.
Yeah, which is I don't want to say a unique problem, but it's less the problem than people who just don't have enough words. But it's still a challenge either way, right? Whether you have too many or too little, to kind of figure out like what stays and what goes. Like that's a whole other kind of emotional, overwhelming part of the process.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because, I have tips in here like pay attention and be intentional, it takes a shift in your thinking to see a shift in your results. And as I was reading the book, as you said, how many times you end up reading your own book? You're going through the editing, and then you're going through more editing, and then you're going through now you have it in person. And at one point I was writing out each of the tips, thinking, well, they'd be a good blog post, or they'd be a good, social media post or whatever. And I realized that 2 of the tips are really similar. I was like, well, okay, out of, 60,000 words, 2 could be similar.
I think it's okay. They could probably have been duplicated. I think you'd probably still be okay. But yeah, it's one of those things because you just see it so many times, like a painful amount of times in my experience.
Yeah.
So what's so far, because your book's only been out for a very short window of time. So like, what is something that's been surprising just as of today?
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned earlier, the very first person who, like a week after, 2 weeks maybe after it was out, and it's a big book, and my daughter's father-in-law sent me an email, and he said, I finished the book. Great read. He's the last person I thought was going to read it. I thought it was going to be his wife or his daughter who lives with him. And I said, well, by any chance, would you feel like writing a review for me? That would be great. So that opened the door of my first review. That was surprising. When I did my virtual launch, I had about 30 people attend, and it included friends I hadn't seen in a really long time. My niece I haven't seen in a long time, so it was family, it was friends, it was clients, lots of different people. Immediate requests to do that lunch and learn that I'm going to do at a library nearby. I don't know. It hasn't been a long time. Yes. But those are just a few of the surprising things. And I keep learning new, about a week before the books were going to be in my hands, I still hadn't made a bookmark. And I was like, just, being able to put something like this together on Vistaprint,
Yep.
And figuring out QR codes and all that stuff. Like, that's surprising. It continues to surprise me that I'm staying on top of all the technology involved.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it. But I feel like you're just well organized to be like, this is a today thing for me. This is a future me thing. Like, just focusing on today versus future.
Yep. Yep. And I'm using my lists better and consistently. Yeah. And it's just fun to hear, who's buying a copy, or they'll send me a picture and got your book today, or it's just fun.
Yeah, I love that, because that's how it should be, right? Like, we spend so much time alone working on this, and in your case, you were in a group setting, so that's great. But a lot of people just like work on it alone for, in some cases, like decades, and then like it comes out, and it's like this push pull where it's like, oh, finally other people are seeing this, but since no one saw it to start with, it's like, I think that it's like a shock situation. Whereas like now, to me, it's like the fun part, right? Like, you've had a community of people around you the whole way through, and now now we can have fun and talk about experimenting with some new tactic or strategy, or how to get it into the hands of the readers and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. I've talked to a few bookstore employees. I have the manager's name to go reach out to them, and just lots to think of in ways that I can promote it. And it's going to be it's going to be a journey,
Sure
and everyone who always said, writing the book is one thing, marketing and promoting it is a whole nother. I'm like, okay, now I understand more.
Yeah, there are 3. It's writing, and marketing.
Yeah. There's more to it than that.
Yep. We just recently crossed the finish line of publishing, and now the marketing will just be for the rest of forever.
Yeah, exactly. But it's funny. One other surprising thing that happened was a friend of mine that I talk to every week, and she's a coach as well. She had been looking for podcasts to be on, and someone said, "Do you have a book?" And she said, "No." And they said, "Well, let us know when you have one. It was like as if to say that's the opening door to be on a podcast. So she sent me the link, and then more she thought about it, she's like, I'm going to do a book. And she had a program in particular that it was going to coincide with and everything. So now I guess in a way I'm supporting her writing her book.
Yeah, which is amazing. It's full circle again.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's so good.
And it doesn't always have to be, this epic, thick thing. But as long as it represents who you are, that's important.
Yeah. Yeah. The size doesn't necessarily matter. It's more about what the intention is of the thoughts you're trying to convey, and not saying them over and over again, which obviously you didn't do. But sometimes we read books and we're like, wow, the author could have just stopped at chapter 1 and I would have gotten everything that I needed from the book. So, but sometimes like my book, I wanted it to be half the size it is. And I think our books are very similar in size.
They are very similar in size. Yep.
320 pages. Like it's a meaty read, but when it's laid out well, it doesn't feel like an overwhelming read. And I think yours is laid out very well through it, because you have those, your stick person graphic that kind of like helps break things up visually. So it gives like good stopping points for people if they want to pick it back up, rather than having really dense content from start to finish.
Yeah. And even just like, if there's an exercise, it's marked as an exercise, the shading, the typesetting was really helpful. And then it was fun to bring in themes like I have a different symbol for each of the 8 steps, and that was fun to work with Blue as well. What does, awareness look like? It's like an eyeball, an acceptance. I accept myself. I accept the challenge to deal with this thing, and assessing, got into what mind mapping is. So of course we use the symbol for mind map for assessing, planning, action, completion, reflection. I'll tell the funny story how it went from 5 steps to 8. It was awareness, acceptance, attitude, assessing, and action. And I, it was 5 A's, the 5A change process, which meant nothing. But what I realized was, you can have assessing your options, but you need to plan what you're going to do, especially the bigger the goal, the more planning is involved. So, then I added planning, and I decided, well, since I don't have 5 A's anymore, rather than attitude, I really wanted mindset anyway, but it was, anyway. So then now I had 6 steps, and I realized if anyone is anything like me, we start lots of things, but we don't necessarily finish them. And I needed to address that, because that in all of the understanding myself, that is me. I do 90% of something and I don't finish it. So completion became the 7th step. And then the after action report, the reflection, even if it's the reflection at the end of a day, what am I proud of? What went well? What did I get done? As opposed to what didn't I do? Why was this so hard? Reflect on what worked, what you would do again. So obviously, depending on the goal, the reflection can be much more broad, but reflection then brings you right back to awareness of what is the next thing. So if it's, I've published a book, yay, I completed it. My reflection is, now what? How do I want to use this book in the world? How can I use this to grow my business? Or who can I help with this book? So then I do reflection, then that gets me right into what do I want to do about it? And that goes into the next goal.
I love that, because what it says is that you started off with 5 steps, and when you started using the 5 steps, you realized there were steps that were missing. And so it's not like you're out here preaching, hey, go do this 8-step thing, and then are actually following your own process. Like so many times people are teaching processes that they don't follow themselves, but that is not
right. And I had to keep reminding myself to follow it, like when it was hard, accept that this is what I need to get done today, or this is the next step, or accept certain things and whatever going to happen a certain way. And then be in a good mindset. That's going to help me move forward. And then, you could do all 8 steps in a day or in an hour. You could do 6 of them right away. Like, what am I aware of? What am I going to do about it? Where, what good mindset, take action. it can be really quick.
Yeah.
So it's a tool that can expand depending on your need or be really concise depending on your needs.
Which is cool when a process allows for that flexibility instead of being really rigid. So I feel like that's when processes feel a little bit less helpful when they're so rigid.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I want to do with my website is like create some sort of tool that's more concise, like that would complement the book. I talked about a values worksheet, so I've got that ready to go. I've got a goal worksheet that I've used for probably 8 years now with my clients. That it's a one pager, so there's resources like that I plan to have available on the website.
Amazing. Yeah. And that's kind of like a perfect segue into talking, like promoting your book. So it's available on your website. You have your webinar coming up on the 23rd. There's other ways to engage with you. Your membership community is coming somewhere in the near future. So, if anyone wants to check you out, your website is running along the bottom of the screen, but it's also wherever you're watching this video, it should be linked below in addition to links to Monica's books. So wherever you would like to purchase your book, you are welcome to do it. I'm a big fan of bookshop.org because they're a B Corp, which means they have a commitment to environmentally friendly business practices, and they are kind of a gold standard. So that is my personal preference. However, if you want to buy it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, you go directly through you, Monica, I think is always the best way to do it, in my opinion.
Yeah. And if people order it through me, then of course, I can sign it, and I include a little journal with, my Doubtful to Decisive writing journal kind of thing. So yeah,
so
I'd love to hear from people and
please.
Find out how they're doing with it. If they get stuck, let me know.
You get the perfect person to come to when they get stuck. So it's perfect.
Yeah.
Any final parting thoughts before we wrap up here?
Well, first I want to thank you because working with PYP has been wonderful, and you and your whole team. It's been a great experience, a learning experience, an overwhelming experience, but also just really satisfying. And what else? Yeah, I hope people will, stop avoiding and actually become more proactive and get unstuck and decide what they want. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great call to action. And then reach out. We'll just keep saying it. Just reach out to you if they do get stuck, or just to celebrate, right? Either direction, celebrating or stuck. Come reach out. As authors, I just love when I get emails from readers, but it doesn't happen nearly as frequent as I would love it. And so, especially as your book's just coming out, like you get the excitement of seeing that in your inbox. So please, someone indulge both of us and make it happen. So.
Yeah, I got an email that said, I got more done in the last 12 hours after I'm reading your book than I've done in 3 months. I was like, great.
That is an amazing testament. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. Well, thank you, Monica. I'm so happy that we are here and celebrating, and I'm excited to see what your book does in the world, because I think a lot of people are going to get themselves unstuck.
Thank you. I hope so.
Yes.